Hey folks, I'm Vic Viper.
I'm Standard Steve.
I'm 2-Bit Goomba.
And we are Arcade Decade. Here at Arcade Decade, we want to share our love of all things retro. It's video gaming from a Gen X perspective. From Pong to today, we've got you covered. Today we are ranking our favorite Atari 2600 games. The Atari 2600, or VCS, video computer system, was released to the masses in September 1977, bundled with 2 joysticks and a conjoined pair of paddle controllers, and a game cartridge including the game Combat, later Pac-Man. So today we're here to rank our top Atari 2600 games. I had the Atari 2600. How about you?
I had it, yes.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, we all have a lot of experience in it. Love the system. It was my first system.
My first system.
Yep.
It turned me on to video games.
Me too.
At a young age.
This came out during the time when I was but a young lad. I probably didn't get it when it first released. It was probably a few years afterwards. This is the height of the arcade boom, when you have Pac-Man, 1980, Donkey Kong, 82, all the greats. What a great time to be alive.
Oh, man.
Lots
I loved
of
going
quarters.
to pizza places and just seeing these arcades there.
Yeah, no matter where you went. We could have been down to the store. You can go down to the grocery store. You can go to a bar, anywhere and play an arcade game.
I didn't go there.
Yeah, I wasn't hitting the bars at that age.
I did. More on that later.
That's where you are.
Yeah, so as far as our qualifiers go on this one, so I had a little hard time with this one as well. I came to about 35 games. It was hard for me to narrow it down. And then I was thinking more on lines of, okay, so a lot of these games are very inferior to their counterpart in the arcade. Mm-hmm. So should I really include these, or should I just go with... And then I just got to the point now where I just love all these games. Right. And there's a few in here that are arcade releases as well. Maybe inferior, but I just have a better memory of them on the Atari than I did on the arcade.
Right.
So I didn't feel right when I made my list without including these arcade ports. So I actually I had to include them. When I finally get my fourth and final list, I felt a lot better about it.
4 lists?
So, yeah, I did. 4 times, 4 revisions.
That's great.
I was struggling as well, and I thought that this was going to be a lot easier than the Nintendo list, which was very difficult. The NES list was very difficult. But then I started putting this together, and like you, I had around 30 games that I really wanted on this list, that I really wanted there, and I started to realize that Nintendo, the NES, had a lot of games that really stood out and made the top 10 a little bit easier. Whereas all of these for the time were really great games. There was 30 or 40 just really, really good games that you can go back to today and still play. So when I was looking at my criteria, I started looking like, how do I cut this down? Because I love all of these games. So I went a little bit of a weird way with this, and I decided to... I was really looking at this, like this came out in my formative years, as we were saying. We were really young, and this was the first console that we had. We didn't get it when it first came out, obviously. It was a few years in, maybe a year or two in when we first got ours. And I remember the entire family going down to Sears and picking this up. Like, they had one, we had called, it was there, and we went down, and it was a lot of money at the time, and it was just an experience. So my list is really based mostly around relationships and what each of these games means in reference to a different person or group of people.
That was a good way to put it, because that's more accurately describes how I felt about it too. Those 3 games that I said have better arcade ports, I just couldn't cut them. I just had an emotional attachment to these games. I needed to include them. And when I put them back in, I felt, this feels right now.
Yeah.
All is right.
Yeah.
I was the same way. The emotional attachment you just said, yes. It's my first time playing video games. I remember actually getting the Atari. I think I was around 5 years old, because we didn't get it, obviously, in 1977. I think it was around 82 we got the Atari. But I just remember going to the store, and the counter was so high. I remember looking up to the counter, and above the counter they'd have, Pitfall and all those games. And I'm like, I want that one, I want that one. But they were like $60 a piece back in the 80s, in the early 80s. That's a lot of money today, by today's standards.
Yeah, I think I remember when we did that trip to Sears, my mom stayed in the car with my brother and I. My younger brother hadn't even been born yet, and I don't think that they wanted us to see how much they were spending on this. I think that my dad just went in, he picked it up, and came back out, and we didn't even know what was going on until we got back home. So that was just a crazy, and it was cold. I remember it being very cold. I remember my mom being bundled up and it being dark, and us in the car going down to pick this thing up. It was just a weird thing, and that's again with a lot of these games, just the stuff that sticks in my mind. Every time I thought about one of them, for the most part, it was who I was with or where I was at playing them, and it's just weird how the brain works and what really matters to us in terms of memories and families and stuff.
Oh, go on.
Be cool if you had your whole soundtrack going down to get this thing, get a Bachman Turner overdrive in your head. There's your whole soundtrack of your life in the 70s.
Yeah, that's I think it was more ELO. My dad was a big ELO fan.
You're a yes guy. You're a yes guy.
That's funny. Yeah, well, I was thinking, like, what sold these games to me was, because I didn't have that background of, again, only 5. I didn't have the, background to go and play the arcade games and things like that. Like, when I was older, I played them. But what really drew me in was, like, the cartridges, like, the pictures on it. Like, I always think, like, that game is going to be so awesome because just the picture on it was so cool. Like, the Pac-Man picture, Pitfall, like, all the games that we're going to go over tonight. But we really, like, draws you in.
You had totally something there that I really want to touch on before we get started. The artwork on these games was nothing shy of amazing. I mean, even look at Joust, right? So you look at games like this. You look at the games for Yar's Revenge, the cover for Yar's Revenge. Look at the cover for all these Missile Command, all these early Atari games. They were works of art. Even the simple Activision games like Pitfall and stuff always had that rainbow like trailing behind them to symbolize action stuff. Oh, it's just great stuff. You don't really see that much anymore.
And most of them had that silver sheen on them. And then you have like the contrast, and this actually didn't diminish anything for me, is you have some of the standard covers which just say the name on it, but you still understood that this was a piece of computer software in a time when computer software was not something that was in the home. Very few people had that, and it was just such an interesting thing that you could buy this and you're pulling what would be a giant arcade cabinet onto your television, and having to know how those hookups work with the UHF hooks on the back of the thing. And then eventually we had better televisions that had coax, and we had to buy the converter to put the two little hooks on there and then slap that onto the
TV. And then you slide on computer.
Yes.
You have the slider. But it works.
Things we take for granted today, HDMI auto switching.
Right.
And you had to actually...
And have on channel 3.
Yeah.
You got to be on channel 3, otherwise it didn't work.
Yep.
Which is funny.
Right.
But you brought up something, too, about the TV. Like, every time I think about Atari, I picture myself sitting on the floor, because the Atari would sit on the floor and had a very long cord. For I don't know how long, but I mean, I would say like 15 feet long.
Right.
So the cord was long because in the 1980s you had console TVs which were more like pieces of furniture.
Yeah.
So you would sit on the floor, and I remember the Atari would be on top of the TV. I'd pull it down, use the slider, pull it down the computer, push it down the computer.
Your bowl of cereal on a Saturday morning.
Oh, 100%. It was just a nostalgic time, being that age too. But again, just playing in front of the TV. Now, again, we say in front of the TV today, but TVs are on the wall.
Yeah.
These TVs are right there in front of you. It's really neat. It's just a cool time, and I don't know, like you felt safe, I guess, on the carpet playing.
Sure. And there was something too, it's like, I remember when Pac-Man came out. Like Pac-Man, I remember buying at the local department store, it was Ames at the time.
Okay.
And we went down there, and I got Pac-Man. I wanted it for Christmas. It was coming out, because Pac-Man was enormous at the time. And it came out, and I remember being $60. And I'm like, wow, like my grandma didn't want to buy for me at this point because it was $60. And I think all the other games I don't think they're any more than 50 to my recollection.
I think you're right. When I said 60 before, not all games. But some games were 60. Yeah. But I think they're more like $50.
Yeah, so when this came out, they really jacked up the demand. And little did they know what kind of garbage was on the inside of that cartridge.
But, honestly, in a lot of cases, you didn't care, and those sometimes you did. And looking back, I wish I had cared more.
Yeah.
But the reality is that, like you were alluding to, some of these ports were not that great. But in some cases, that actually made them better. And I've got some on my list that that fit that category.
Yeah.
Oh, can't wait to hear it.
Between Pac-Man and E.T., between those two, they doomed the whole Atari franchise.
That's where they buried E.T.
So, all right. You guys ready to get into this?
Let's do it.
Sure.
All right, let's get it rolling.
Who's going to start?
Number 10.
So my first game, we just mentioned E.T., my top 10. So number 10 was E.T. And again, let me go over my criteria because it was ranked one of the worst games I've ever made, actually. But being, again, just like the Nintendo list, I had to own it, and I go with nostalgia. And I played this game, and of course, watched the movie. The movie was phenomenal. It's still phenomenal today, I feel. You know, I loved E.T. E.T. makes me, still chokes me up, makes me cry. I just love it. So playing the game. The game did not make... Well, the game actually did make me cry. Of anger. I could never...
You and a lot of people.
I can't beat this game. It was just ridiculous. The things you had to do in this game.
Didn't make sense.
It didn't. But the objective was basically guide E.T. through the different boards, collect pieces of... I thought Reese's Pieces was in there, but it's like you got to put together like some intergalactic type of communicator because he has to phone home, right? So you have to build a phone. But yeah, oh my goodness. I fell in the pit a million times.
Yeah,
and his neck would have to come up and he'd fly up in the air, but then I would I don't know, he'd fall down. It was the most frustrating game. And you're going to hear me say that today.
Life energy or whatever you have when you do that.
But the controversy on it was buried for all those years, and they actually found it. And I could see why they buried it.
Right. Well, they made more like cartridges than they had consoles at the time. Like, why would you even do something like that? I mean,
that makes no sense.
You could assume everybody would have one and then have extra to spare.
I'm going to buy 6 ETs.
Yeah. I'm not on the hate fest on that game.
But it's my top 10 because I did play. I did keep playing it. It had replay value for a 5-year-old. Yeah. But I did. That's why I picked it.
Actually, if you beat it, it's very satisfying. My one gripe with it is the falling in the pits was just way too that should have been fixed.
The pits.
Yeah, it was the pits. So when you try to get out of that thing, if you don't do it right, you fall right back in. You got to do it over again. That was the most frustrating part, and that ruined the game. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been as bad. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah, those guys chase you, and they're relentless. You know what I mean? Yeah, but otherwise, I didn't hate it. I
didn't hate it either. We had it. It was one that we played. But my mom had taken us to the movies. We had it, and they really enjoyed the movie, and it was something everyone lost interest in it super quick because it didn't make any sense. You know, we kept trying to figure out, the instructions weren't there, and it just it didn't get a ton of play after the first
I'm sure it was a cautionary tale of what not to do.
Right. Yeah, true.
Well, it's a tale that a lot of games did not learn.
Yeah.
Is this going to ruin my top 10 because I picked E.T. as my top 10?
There's
so many more.
I'm tempted to join the hate bandwagon on this game, but I just can't because I don't really hate it that much.
There's so much that surrounds it, too.
I know.
But and that's actually the redemption of this game is how much it still exists in pop culture. You ask people who are a little bit younger than us to name 5 Atari games, they might throw out some Pac-Mans and things like that, but everyone knows the saga of E.T. at this point if you're in gaming. Like, that's been part of the history, and it's just an interesting...
folklore.
Yeah, it's like a bad boomerang. It just came back around, and not for a good reason, but it made for an interesting story. There's very few games that have that interesting a story to them.
I've seen other YouTubers actually buy the E.T. game with the box and cartridge. It's all messed up, wrecked from where they buried it.
Where they buried it.
And they're paying a lot of money for it. And look at that. We have the cartridge here, so we don't have to pay for it.
Yeah, we just did a dub over for a playthrough of Captain America and the Avengers.
Yes.
Again, like that game wouldn't have been so well remembered by us if it didn't have that cheesy dialogue.
Oh, yeah, that's...
Like that we've been quoting that for decades at this point.
That was the second hook.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, let's hear who was going next.
All right. My number 10, not sure if any of you guys had this, but was Dodge 'em.
Oh, yeah. Love Dodge 'em.
Yeah, it's one of those ones that was easily forgettable, but the one thing that, for me, with Dodge 'em was my dad being a car guy. He really liked cars. And this was a game that I think it was like our second game we got for the Atari when it came out. We obviously had the pack-in for Combat. But Dodge 'em was the next one. Like, he picked that, and we got that. And this was my introduction to competitive gaming. Like this was the first one where we would sit around trying to figure that out. You're trying to collect all those pieces. It was almost a Pac-Man clone in that sense, but you could destroy the other person. Like you actually had to think about it. You had your 3 layers, and the cars one went clockwise, one went counterclockwise, and you're kind of like on the edge of your seat guessing whether that person's going to come into your lane, or are they going to go someplace else and get the dots, and or you want to go in that lane, who's going to kill who. And it was just a very interesting thing, and it was one that I just, my dad is not that into gaming. I think he's played like maybe a dozen in his life, including stealing my Game Boy and playing Tetris for years. But
I remember that story.
Yeah, I'll never forget that.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, thanks, Dad. But it was cool that was something that we were able to connect at, him not being really a gamer, but being able to sit down there and play Dodgem, and my brother as well, and we would have these competitions and all. But Dodgem was very cool, easily replayable. You could still sit down with it today. The chess game of guessing what the other person's going to do while still trying to get as much points as you can was a very, very addicting for how simple the mechanic was. And I think that's the story of a lot of Atari games.
Yeah,
I love what you said about playing with your fathers, like playing games with them. And that really brings the family together.
Yeah.
And those are things you remember. I mean, we always talk about, the old adage, you're playing ball with your dad. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, video games brought him together, too. And you're in the house playing, and I don't know. It's just like that. Like my brother and I again, from the Nintendo days, but this is before. Like, we'd play together. And I remember Dodgem. That was so much fun. Even playing against the computer, though.
Yeah.
Oh, that was rough. And then now Atari had... It was different. Like the Switch, you could switch it to A and B, right? Harder.
Yeah.
And you could. I never understood why they had black and white in color.
Yeah.
Who would pick the black and white one?
If you didn't have a color television at that point, because that was still a reality.
Right.
It was for a long time.
I'm not sure. I'm trying to remember if my grandparents still had black and white when we first got the Atari. It might actually be that way. So yeah.
There's different versions of the Atari 2600, I think,
There
right?
is,
Because you had a. I
There's
know
a
you had a
4-switch.
different version.
Yeah, 4-switch as opposed to the 6-switch.
Yeah, I like this one.
And then there was a third one did away with the wood grain one. It was kind of the a little bit differently.
See, the wood grain, that's what I grew up with. And I just think that is the...
Yeah.
When I think Atari, I think of the wood grain.
And that's, I think, again, a function of they thought that this is going to sit on a console television, a piece of equipment that probably had a wood grain, and it would fit in much better rather than just a black box.
That's true, and our TV did. And now I think Lego made an Atari.
Yes.
You could put together your own Atari, and it even has the cartridges, and they come like 3D. It's really cool. I say 3D, but I mean like the little guys on it, so it brings it to life a little bit. So I forget the games on it, though.
I do,
Centipede?
but don't say them yet.
Yeah.
Okay, you do remember? Okay, so we'll say it later.
Let's continue on with number 10.
I do remember a piece like the black and white switch was used in some games like Ghostbusters because you only had one button on the joystick.
Yeah.
So they utilized some of these controllers. Like a few games did that. I remember. It was not Star Master, is the other one. Quite a few of them did, where you had to manipulate these in order to...
I didn't know. That's why I couldn't conquer any games.
In Ghostbusters, you had to flick the switch when the Stay-Puft Marshman would come. Otherwise, you'd be done for.
I didn't know this.
So, my number 10 is Haunted House.
Oh,
Okay?
yes.
Haunted House is like the closest thing you'd ever come to like a mystery in a video game, right? Again, we're talking Atari 600, so this is, early on, so it's very primitive. But for being primitive, it was immersive. You were just eyeballs floating in the dark.
Yep.
Bumping into walls, creatures floating around. But in order to find anything, you have to light a match to see. And when you did, then the ghost could come, people could see you, the bad guys could see you.
You'd see them.
And they'd put your flame out and everything. And you were trying to go and you'd collect all these items that were beneficial to you. But your main goal was to get 3 parts of this urn and get out the door.
Oh, that was a trophy. Yeah, see?
Yeah.
That's it. It did look like that, but no. The story is it's supposed to be an urn.
That was 5.
Yeah. So it was really spooky, in the fact that, when I'm playing, like, I got really into it because, like, you're scared. You know what I mean? Like, everything's coming at you. You're going upstairs, come down to the level.
How about the step? When you go upstairs, it goes... You hear yourself walking.
Yeah.
Like, that was a scary game. It was cool. But, I mean, it's scary in a fun way.
It was. So that's what I mean. Like, it was a mystery, which was so cool. Like, that you can take a mystery that you see, like, in a great mystery movie and put it in a cartridge and play it. You know what I mean? was immersive in that way. You know,
Yeah.
it was such a fun game.
I just actually played Haunted House a couple weeks ago on the At Game system, and like the stand-up arcade. But it's so much fun. I was like trying to get as fast as I could go through it, and
Your footprints.
it's amazing. Real fast.
Yeah.
So it's pretty neat. It's fun to go back and replay these.
And it's the difference in the experience on the Atari. Like, you can play the emulators, you can do these things on computer, but the thing that you really have to imagine is the resistance in that controller. That stick was not easy to move. It really had a lot of force to it, and the pain in your hand when you experience that fear and try to run away as quick as possible. You're pulling the stick over as hard as you can. Whereas on modern day controllers, it's just push over and it goes. You know, but there was a lot of games where, man, that crutch in your hand here, and it hurt just because you were trying to force that stick further over.
I mean, we're showing it here. Can we just say how simplistic this is? I mean, it just... Let me look at it.
And games like Haunted House and Activision Decathlon always did this to you.
That's going to come off, though.
That's what I mean. Always did this.
Come on.
It broke my controller.
No. But I just
like, you had to go back and forth with it, like track and field. You had two buttons. This should go back and forth, and that murdered. So then when this came off, I took an ink pen and just like waggle, 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 waggle. Like,
is this a 4-point or is that an 8? 4-way or 8-way?
It's got to be 8.
No, I think it's 8.
So it's an 8-way controller with one button.
Yeah, it might even be somewhat of an analog. I don't know. So
I don't know.
Who knows?
Like, I love that.
It just goes to show it doesn't need to have 50 buttons to be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know a lot of older people have a hard time playing the newer systems because they have so many buttons.
That's why the Wii took off so much, because it was very accessible to even to any group of people. You know.
Let's do a Wii one. I love the Wii.
Oh, we'll get there.
I love that game. I love that system. I mean,
Right on.
who doesn't? Comment if you don't like the Wii.
Right.
No one should be commenting.
So Haunted House, that is my number 10.
All right.
Number 9er.
All right, so my number 9, it was made the same year as E.T., and it was another movie. Can you guess what it was? Raiders of the Lost That was my next one. So again, I'm 5 years old, playing these games, and I guess we just kept buying the movie games. I don't know, but it was based on the movie, and again, you're Indiana Jones, and you had to find, and I don't know what you had to find. It's like different search for different items throughout the boards. Something for the Ark of the Covenant or something, right? Is that what it was?
It didn't walk you through it either. So it was,
No, I didn't know. You needed 2 controllers to do it. And that's probably why I didn't beat that game either. Because
select through your things, your items. Wasn't that it?
I never knew that. So that's probably why I didn't do well enough.
Yeah,
but
well,
again,
you weren't alone, because I never beat it either.
I
knew
kept
how to play it.
I guess these games taught me tenacity. Like, I kept on playing. Didn't want to give up.
Right. Resilience. Something that's terribly missing in many
yes, because today sometimes we give up easily, but back then you just kept going.
Yep.
Just didn't want to give up. Plus, you paid $50 for these games, and back then was a lot of money. And parents said, "You better play this game.
You're gonna like it."
Yeah.
We're not getting another one until you play it enough."
My parents got me Math Grand Prix to try to make me learn my times table.
I have that game too. My parents did the same thing. That was great.
You mean it's not number 1 on your list?
No.
Oh, boy, I'm gonna look like a fool.
Ollie did make the cut.
Did every parent buy that game?
Dishonorable mention.
I liked that game though. I did like it. But the car would just go.
Oh yeah. Those things so
3 times 2?
stimulating, like
6.
Mathematics.
Honestly, though, one of the educational games, we had a Commodore 64, and one of the games that my parents had got us was it was just called the Solar System, and you were supposedly on this ship, but you would zoom out to other planets, and it would just tell you facts. It was nothing but a digital encyclopedia.
Right.
Man, I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. I went into astronomy.
Same.
I
Thanks,
absolutely
Atari.
love that. This simple educational things, it could work. And then the other one, one of the other ones we only had a couple games for that thing. One of the other one was Kids on Keys, which used like balloons to teach you to type.
Right.
And man, I could type great today because of that stupid game.
Yeah. I never learned. It wasn't mandatory typing when I was in school. It was like after I graduated, so it would have been for you. But I had to learn from Mavis Beacon teaches typing the program. Remember that?
I took
early
keyboarding.
Windows or 3.1 whatever it was. Yeah.
Mavis Beacon.
Mavis Beacon teaches typing.
Well, it's funny because I actually went into it and I took the typing class because I knew it was going to be easy for me because I had that background. Like it was actually that video game got me an easy grade in high school. There it is, putting it out there, parents.
Yeah. Thanks, Mavis
Oh man,
Beacon.
your teacher feels bad now. You're like, I got this.
I gotta send Mavis Beacon a Valentine or something one of these times.
Or after you break it off with Sarah Lee, right?
Thanks for bailing me out, Mavis.
Mavis. That's great. But anyone named Mavis, we're okay with you too.
But yeah, Where's Lost Ark? It was very confusing, and I never
was.
really did beat it. We tried to beat it not too long ago, you and I. Remember that?
Did we?
tried to go through it, and it just got to the point where we got real far, like farther than I've ever gotten, and then we fell to the ground, and I'm like, that's it.
Yeah,
you
that's the
had
part
a-
where
you
you
had
have
a
to cross that
parachute.
gap.
Yeah,
You had a parachute
parachute part.
into like a cave.
Yes.
And then people
Under
were
a
running
bridge.
across it, and I never know what to do there.
Yeah, I
So
know.
That
That
was,
was
it. As
the-
far as I ever got.
Yeah. All
And
right,
the
we're
snakes
gonna
were
play
cool.
through that one night. We're
All
gonna
right,
get through
yeah,
them
let's
and
do
finally beat it.
Oh, I would love that.
We're gonna do it.
Oh, there's so many games I love to beat that I can never have.
It was a fun game though. Definitely way different than any game I've ever played,
Yeah.
before or after. So it was definitely a cool game.
All right, cool. Let's move on.
All right, my number 9. Another example of the simplest mechanic making for such a great game was, and this I know is probably not going to be on anyone's list ever, but Frogs and Flies. And this
That's
was
true, Steve.
Yeah.
the reason why is it's probably one of the only, and I don't know if I can name another, but one of the only games that my mother would play, with the exception of one of my honorable mentions here. And it was, she does not like video games. She loves board games. She would love to play board games with us, Trivial Pursuit, Sorry, all these great games that I have these great memories of. But one of the only games that she would sit and play, and we would actually have, like, she would take the competition seriously. And a lot of times she would whoop my rear end at Frogs and Flies until I figured out what her trick was. And this was one of the things we had a couple of years ago. Our fall event was an Atari thing, and Frogs and Flies came up, and I absolutely dominated. And the muscle memory was still there for this because of this simple trick. Everyone waits for the fly that are coming from the opposite direction. They jump up and try to get it. But if you actually time it correctly, you can get the ones that are coming on your side of the screen and the one coming from the other side and completely rob the other person of any chance. And I remember my mom doing that to me repeatedly. Like, I hadn't figured it out. Like, I was a stupid little kid. But eventually I did, and then I learned those skills and was able to bring that back. And just, again, so weird how the brain works. It didn't take me an instant to remember the exact timing. 40 years later, just remember that timing to do that. So just a great memory. Again, if you've never played the game, very simple. There's 2 frogs on lily pads. Flies are coming across the screen at the top. You jump up and collect as many flies as you can. Stupid simple mechanic. That was the entire game. There was a time limit, and at the end, this little firefly went across the end. And I believe the game was originally called Frog Bog on the television, maybe, and then it was ported over. But yeah, just a great simple game. Another game, great memories playing with my mom, sitting on the floor, like you said, with this in front of our console television, and having my mother, who is not a gamer, whip my rear end.
Yeah,
I remember that.
Yeah, that had that one right there, the black cartridge. So this one here had that weird shape to it. The Mattel games, Frogs and Flies look like this.
Yeah.
With that odd shaped cartridge. And I remember one thing as time went by, as a timer, it got darker and darker and darker in the day.
Yep.
It's like you got nighttime, then the firefly came across.
Yeah, and that's how you knew it was winding down. Yeah, super simple. It probably only is 30 lines of code. I know I'm exaggerating. I know it's tough to make them, but it's just a great mechanic and a fun thing that you can still pick up today and still have a good time with.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I just love the fact that your mom cracked the code and dominated you.
I know. Yeah.
I still I bear the scars. I'm seriously thinking about therapy on that one. That was
Probably Thanksgiving. She's like, "Hey, Steve, remember I used to kick your butt at Frogs and Flies?"
I doubt she remembers it, and she wouldn't talk
Yeah.
about video games. But
I think you're so smart. Do you? How about the Frogs and Flies?
You know what?
Exactly.
And the thing that I love, when you talk about resilience, is the fact that she didn't hold back on me.
Right.
She, like some mothers would let people win, and that's how I learned to dominate my kid and not let him win.
Right.
That was, until he grew up enough to turn it back around.
Crush your kids' dreams
Yeah.
with Atari games.
Okay, so my number 9 is Dragonfire. So Dragonfire had was by iMagic. This company was all their cartridges were the same. It was like the silver with the rainbow color in it. But all their games were really great. Not all of them, but most of them were so good. Like I loved iMagic's games, probably second only to Activision's. Mm-hmm. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But Dragonfire was a game where you're a castle on each side, and you would cross a drawbridge, and there's a dragon blowing fire at you from the tunnel on the other side. So you can't see the dragon as of yet. So you have to duck fireballs, and you have to leap fireballs to get across the drawbridge and get into the castle on the other side. When you get in there, you have to steal all the treasure from the dragon, all the dragon's hoard, and he's throwing fireballs at you from the bottom. So on the bottom you have the dragon. He changes colors every other level, which really kind of satisfied my D&D itch at the time. So I had this D&D set, this Dungeons and Dragons set, when I was a kid. It came the simple box. It was the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, the one with there's a guy with the spear, green dragon behind him and everything. We played that a lot. When we were kids, we didn't know how to play, really. Probably played it way wrong. But we loved it. It just sparked something in me that I just loved it. So that's why I kind of got into that stuff. And so it was just really something that really kind of like brought me into that fantasy world. And it was really cool. Was repetitive, sure, but at least it had two different game variations. Like you had the drawbridge part, then you had the looting the treasure part. So it was a little bit more variety. But yeah, it was just one of those great games. I just love that
Can't
style
you
of play.
hide in a spot?
Oh,
so when you played this game,
when
I
you
think
first
you could
go
hide
in,
like on the right side of the screen. You could hide
when you first go in. See, here's the thing, though. This gets me every time is because you're trying to get into that. When you're going over from the left to the right, to try to get from one tower to the other, you try to get in that thing, and they're still shooting fireballs at you. So you want to get in there and get out before you get killed. And then when you do that, you're holding over. So as soon as you do that, you're holding over and you get whacked. You have to remember to lay off as soon as you get in there. Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to get torched by the dragon.
Yeah,
So, but if you do, then you go all over, you grab all those, then you escape the other end, and then do the same thing over again with the two drawbridges. But yeah, I just really enjoyed that game.
I think I want to play it now. You made me want to play it now.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Let's pause and go do it.
Yes.
Let's pause and go do it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and that's another thing with the art too is that iMagic art, like you can't see it on this, but on the boxes they had some really cool art too. They did different ways to make that art really pop. Like the dragon, I don't know how they did it back in the 80s. It looked like, I don't know, it looked like a CGI dragon, but it wasn't, obviously. There was a demon attack, which I could tell. There's little figure puppets that look like lizards. I think they used chrome spray paint on this, and they made it, but it made it look so cool. Yeah. And there was one with, was it Moonsweeper, I think it was, where there was this astronaut, looking like this, climbing up on the side of a cliff, and then you see in the reflection of his mask, you see this demon-looking thing, and it's so cool.
I love when they do that, when you draw and you put some reflection in something.
And I think one of the things about this were the graphics, and I hesitate to use the term, but I'm not going to say bad, but basic. The graphics were so basic that most of these games required you to use your imagination to fill in the gaps. They weren't giving you a complete experience. This wasn't a, 2 million color ray traced world. This is, you have 4 different colors and you have blocks that represent people and objects, and you had to use your imagination. So that cover, capturing your imagination, and it helps you actually to fill in the blanks in the story of what's going on there. You didn't need it to be spoon-fed through great graphics. It was more about getting a good gameplay experience to go with your imagination.
Well said, yeah. What about directions? Did they tell you the story when you read directions?
They generally, so you, even up to the 16-bit range, you had to read the manual, otherwise you wouldn't get it.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was...
That's probably why I didn't beat any of the games, because I didn't read the manual.
Well, you have to read the manual. I used to read it on the way home from when I bought the game. In the car on the way back, it's written on how to play.
That's true. I just start playing.
Right. I will say one thing, though, as far as Dragonfire goes. The dragon in that was leaps and bounds better looking than the one in Adventure.
That's true.
There's
a reason. There's a reason for that.
Yeah. Yes.
They hop around. Hey, come on.
You mean the seahorses?
Yeah, the seahorses.
They were like seahorses.
Yeah,
totally.
totally.
But they got nasty, and you put it on the difficult level.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah.
And the sound effects on that, though.
That's right. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, that is my number 9, Dragonfire.
Number 8. Great.
All right, so my number 8 is Berserk. Berserk. So that one was really cool because it like talked. They're like I don't know, what do they have? Like a robotic voice or something like that? And I never heard that before at that time, ever. It was something like, it's talking to me.
Yeah.
But that was neat. And then I loved how you could you could shoot.
The Atari? They had the voice in the Atari?
I don't know. I
remember the arcade they definitely did. Did they have it?
I think it was more like sounds like it was trying to talk to you.
Oh, yeah.
Almost like Qbert type.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember it now because there are different ports in the
talked to
different
me.
versions.
Maybe it did. I can't remember.
There might have been things that were
awesome.
talking to you at the time.
Yeah.
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 I don't know.
Like your mom
Again,
come up for dinner.
I'm trying to remember here. It's a long time ago, okay? But
maybe.
I thought it was talking or something.
Could be.
But I liked when you shoot at those robots and things like that. And I thought I could move. You can kind of move the shooting, right? When you shoot it, like not the shooter, but what are you, a robot or something?
You're human, and
the human.
robots
so you had to
everywhere.
move right to be directly with what you want to shoot at.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, and then you had to get out of the way real fast because they would shoot back at you. And
Yeah.
so that was, but I don't know, that was neat. That was like my first shooter.
Yeah.
Was it called a first-person shooter? I don't know.
It wouldn't be first person.
Third.
It'd be,
Third-person
Or
shooter.
not even third. Right?
Top
More
down,
top
yeah.
down, or not even. I don't even know.
That was my first time shooting guns.
I love though that you had the head and then you had the body. There's a gap here, and if
Yeah.
you did it right, you can actually have the enemy bullets go right through that gap and not hurt you.
Oh,
Yeah.
see? I wish I knew. Now I know.
Yeah.
That's
See,
cool.
you learn a lot today.
I'm learning so much about Atari.
Yeah.
Fun.
Probably as much as you learned in Math Grand Prix.
Oh, I just put it on audition.
Yeah.
At the time.
Gotta nerf it.
He's trying to push the difficulty lever up further. He's trying, how can I get easier?
Yeah.
That's great.
Sorry, I'm
Yeah,
not
so
ready. I'm
that's
not ready for
mine.
division today.
Yeah, that's my 8.
All right.
Berserk.
My 8's going to go quick because my number 8 was Haunted House. Also on my list. Again, just love this. Now, in addition to me, our family having the Nintendo, my aunt, who would babysit us either during the summers when my parents were working or if I had sick days, she had an Atari. And I think she actually had hers first. And because she was the babysitter in the family, she got that and had a lot of great games that we didn't have. So even a lot of the ones that are on my list were up there. But Haunted House was another one of those that I remember, being in both places, and that scary, like Haunted House, and just the only thing I could really add to what you said before about the gameplay and all that stuff. But Haunted House was really credited as being the first survival horror game. Like, this was a game that instilled fear. It was almost like you didn't want kids to play this because you'd have nightmares. You're going through this dark place, you can't see what's there, and then all of a sudden something comes out and tries to kill you. Like that was terror. So you're like, there's no Resident Evil, there's no Dead Space, there's no Silent Hill without Haunted House first, laying that ground of this game, which was enough to scare you and allowed to terrify children as they're trying to enjoy their entertainment. So that was made my list too. Loved playing it with my family, trying to figure out what the heck was going on. When we finally figured out, we had to gather the pieces and then going through. But it was still scary. It's still scary every time you turn that light on and you're finding things and you're leaving yourself open for the spiders and the bats and everything inside. It was cool. Good game.
Yeah.
I remember the sound effects too of like the wind would whistle through
when a ghost was coming or whatever. Yeah.
That was neat. Yeah, that was like a trigger,
Right.
trigger point there.
That's
Get scared.
that's the first nope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, nope. The other way.
Cause and effect.
And this game was very effective at scaring you, and you're just a pair of eyeballs in the dark.
Yeah.
You're
Right.
just eyes. That's all you are. It was cool though, however, where you faced. Like
The eyes
would look like left, up, down, left, right.
Yeah,
That
that
was
was
pretty cool.
cool.
And if you look at like the art for this, it's not like it's doesn't give you away much, but you just see those eyeballs on there.
Yeah.
They're like this, and the bat hanging down and stuff. I mean, it was cool. It was neat to be scared like that. It really was, And you're sitting there with your parents, so everything's okay. But still, you're going to go to that next room, and you don't know. You just don't know, and that was just a cool thing. And I'm not a huge fan of horror games, but some of them I really enjoy, and that's the beginning of them right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think it's scared where. Well, you did say like kids could have nightmares, but when I played in the daytime, so I wasn't scared to that point, but I was jumpy. Oh, like it really, you jumped at it, you got nervous, You know,
Right.
I was that type of scared. Like,
Yeah. It's like, what's going to be in the next room here? A spider? A demon? I have no idea. It could be bad.
Right.
Yeah.
If you played at night, probably, and you were alone, you hear those sound effects. I could see you getting nervous and scared.
So one thing, this guy understood the assignment. You know, tell me more about your game. Okay, your eyes in the dark, right? And there's spiders in it and bats and stuff. And this guy just got it and ran with it. You know, that's pretty perfect. Look at that. Okay, hey, you did great. That guy is.
You knew it was going to be creepy.
That guy's one of those real American heroes.
Yeah. Nice. All right, I like that one.
Okay. Okay, so my number 8 is Cosmic Arc. Another iMagic game. It was, I don't know if this is really, I took it as, but I think it might be the sequel to Atlantis.
You are correct.
Because the little ship in there, in Atlantis, that left after you lost, like would go into the space and like flee away. And then in this, it matches the same exact one in Cosmic Arc.
That is actually the story.
So anyways, in Cosmic Arc, it starts off here this big ship. It's like a big giant saucer. And you're assaulted with meteors from up, down, left, and right. And you would shoot up, down, left, or right just by moving the joystick.
Oh, I remember this game.
Yeah, so that was that simple. And it took fast reaction time. This was a great game. So, and when you got past like X amount of meteors, then your ship would leave the bottom, the little ship from Atlantis, and you would go down to planet side. And when you're on planet side, your mission was to go down and use this little tractor beam to rescue a pair of like alien animals. So you have to get one, and then you get the other one, and then you bring them back up to your ship to save
Noah's
them.
Ark.
Exactly, Cosmic Arc, you know.
Cosmic Arc. I get it now. Now I get it.
And then later on, you'd have like lasers that would shoot at you, like planet defenses, wherever the case is.
Yeah.
And then, if you didn't do it fast enough, you got this proximity alarm where we're just like, okay, so I have to leave these guys behind and just get up there and go, because soon, if you didn't get there in time, one of those meteorites would come and smash your ship.
Oh.
So, yeah.
It's like Noah's Ark.
It was a fun game.
It has lasers, though.
And then you'd go back, yeah, right. Noah could have used some lasers, I'd
That would have
imagine.
been cool.
Yeah.
So with the flood coming, but
right.
now we had
Yeah.
what was it? What did you say? Aliens coming? What was
Yeah,
it?
little alien monsters
so
there, yeah.
That was neat. That's a cool game.
Yeah. And then you go back up to the ship and then go back down to another planet. Different
Oh, I
animals.
like that.
A variety of little animals. It was always cool to see the new little animals they had there. It
Were
was,
there unicorns?
I don't know. Speaking of Noah's Ark, that game, for that arcade game, Noah's Ark, it was a little tiny, it was by Moppet Electronics. It was like a quarter-size arcade. You'd have to play it on your knees, even if you were like an
at game system without the riser?
half that without the
goodness.
riser even. Like,
Oh my
seriously, if you weren't a kid, I remember being like in my early teens, maybe 11, 12, and I had to play it on my knees. So with that arcade game, you basically had to rescue, you're in the ark, and then you go down, you rescue pairs of these things, and all the while the water's coming up. It was a fun game, but that was the arcade version.
Cool.
That's something to talk about another time, because actually a lot of fun memories with that one too. But
Oh, that's neat. Yeah.
Yep. So,
Chuck E. Cheese, I think,
yeah.
when I think of that game.
me too. That's what I remember playing. No one seems to remember that game either. But
No one played the game, but
right, yeah.
it wasn't popular.
Yeah, but I digress. That was my number 8, Cosmic Arc.
Nice.
Number 7.
All right, so my number 7 was Steve's number 8. Haunted House. So I don't know why we all, I guess, played that game.
Hidden gem.
Three-way
I'm not going to
crossover.
say anything else about it, but it was scary, fun, liked it, bats, eyes, good.
All right. 3-way crossover. That was the first that's happened, I think, hasn't it? With the NES, we didn't have it either, right?
You didn't have Mario 3 on yours, right? You only had Super Mario Brothers. So
yeah.
yeah, that was.
Did we get a prize
that was
for all
close.
three of us? With this?
My number 7, Laser Gates. Now, this is another one of those games that, again, the silver with that rainbow on there was great. But this is one of those, the relationship in this one, this was at my aunt's house. She had this, I did not, but went up there. And I remember playing this at her house with my cousin who is deaf. And this game was so cool to me. You're this little ship, it was called the Dante Dart. The little ship that was in there. Yeah, I had to do a little bit of research on that one. And the story is you're trying to navigate through this computer that is starting to self-destruct. And if you don't stop it from self-destructing, this computer, the universe ends. I'm not quite sure how they made that leap, what happened there, but you went through this series of gates that either you had to shoot through, they had a gap that went up and down, or they disappeared and then came back on the screen, and you're navigating your ship trying to shoot enemies and get to the end of the hallway. There were 4 different ones, and you had to shoot the detonator for these explosives in this computer, and you had to get through 4 of them. Neat little fact about this, the detonator that was in this computer had the numbers 6507 on it, which made no sense to me as a kid. But doing a little bit of research, that was actually the CPU designation for the chip in the Atari 2600.
That's
so
cool.
yeah, they're kind of doing a little meta thing there,
Right.
where it's the Atari that's going to blow up, and your world is the end of video games. I guess.
I see. Wow. Okay.
Love that now.
The thing, and this, if you watch the last video, and for me, I am very much a sound guy, and the thing for this game had absolutely visceral sound.
Yeah.
If your television was up, this was like, I'm getting chills thinking about this sound. Like, it was just, it would push the speakers of your thing. It's just this crunching laser saw wave as these things came on, and it terrified me. Like, you're trying to get through there because you don't want to get hit by let alone the visual, but the sound. And this was a cool thing for me, and I have another story about this later, but the fact that my cousin who was playing was deaf and was simply unaffected by the sound. It didn't make a difference to her, which was really cool.
Right.
But me, I'm here terrified because every time that gate came out, it was this grrr,
Right.
grrr, and I'm like, oh man. Yeah,
It was-
this was a really cool exercise, and whoever did the sound on this game did a great job of just absolutely making you fear the objects that were being thrown at you.
She's probably looking at you like, what's this freak doing?
Yeah.
You're like,
Doing
"Oh,
that."
bugs in the elbow."
She was ice cold doing this, like nothing. I'm like, oh, every time that noise came on.
Yeah, that was a great sound in that too. I could still, to this day, I remember every one of the gates.
Yeah.
The 2 that came together, those
Yeah.
gates. The one that went up and down. The one you had to shoot through had a different sound. They all had different
Yeah.
sounds depending on which, like.
And then there was like a missile that came
Yep.
at you that had that sound too. Like most of the times it's just a bleep or a bloop and stuff when an
Yep.
enemy shoots or something. No, that stuff was visceral's the only word that I had for it. It was absolutely just amazingly done, using sound as a weapon against the player.
Oh, that's a great game.
That's really
Yeah, yeah, good call.
good one.
So, my number 7 is Hero. Did you ever play this?
I don't think that I
I've
did.
never
So
heard
this
of
one,
it.
I think it might have been later because I didn't end up playing this until later on because I didn't have it. But when I played it, this thing was just so cool. It's probably one of their greater games. And so you're basically this soldier wherever you are. You have this like propeller backpack, and you're basically going down these caverns and rescuing these spelunkers. So I don't know if I don't know if they're spelunkers. I don't know what they are, but they're down there. So you figure that's what they are. So you have your button shoots, and then if you hold down and your button, you lay dynamite down next to walls. You have to blow up to get any further. So, and you can like shoot a light. If you shoot the light, then everything goes dark. You know, there you could pick the wrong path and get hit. And so basically, every level is you trying to get from the surface, rescue the stranded spelunker, and then. You know, and that was it.
Yes.
But it was just so much fun to do it because you went down, all the levels changed, there were a lot of variety, and little enemies, you'd have to shoot them. And when you did, like the cool part about it too was like it was very challenging in that you were of course timed, and when you go to the spots where you have to blow it up the walls, you have to get far enough away or you'll get killed too. So it was, but it was just a very fun game. It's definitely one that had a lot of replay value too. I still play that to this day. Just figure like, I want to play that fired up. Yeah,
That's neat. Hero. I remember that.
Yeah.
It kind of reminded me of like Chopper Command in one part where you said like you come down
yeah.
and you save people.
It's H.E.R.O. Hero. I don't know
I've
what it
seen
stands
this
for.
then,
so,
yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. You're basically like a guy with a propeller jetpack or something.
Yeah.
It's a cool game.
I wonder if
It's
I
fun.
actually did play it. I don't know. I never heard of that Hero though. But and when you say that with the H .E.
Yeah.
R. O. Yeah.
No, it's
What
a great
if
game.
it stands for something? Like
I'm sure.
What's-
Yeah.
Helicopter Evacuation Rescue Operation?
Is that
Would
it,
make
huh?
sense. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I'd say
I have
yes.
a feeling about something. I'm not going to confirm nor deny at this point. But.
Oh. All right, then.
So that is my number 7 Hero.
All right.
By Activision, mind you. One of the best.
Awesome company.
Yeah, definitely. That's it.
Number 6.
All right, so my number 6 might be other people's, maybe not you guys, but if they did a list, maybe top 3. But mine is Asteroids. My number 6
Great
is
game.
Asteroids.
Yeah. Well,
Love Asteroids. Came out in 1979. I was reading about it, so came out then before 1982, like my other ones. But in this game, you're a ship. You're shooting all the asteroids, trying to get through the boards. But I always found it hard because if you start moving and you go too fast, now the asteroids would get you. You could go through the screen and come out the other side, up, down, left, right. But I'd always stay in the center. I just start circling myself and then just keep shooting and just hope for the best. But that was a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. I have a memory about that one, too. I went down with my own money that I have for my paper out, went down to the local department store, Ames, walked down to it, and remember buying that game and coming back home with it and playing it. The memories I have with that game are just amazing. So, one thing about it, too, is I remember with the asteroids, the shield was down, or no, thrust was down, was it? And how was that do?
I think thrust was up.
Thrust was up and shield was down. Yeah.
Thrust was definitely, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
And
a
I
fun
remember
game.
when I went back and played that recently, and I played it for probably an hour, and I had to quit, on the default difficulty. I couldn't die. I kept I had 9 lives or something like that, and I think it's 10 lives. I don't know what it was. I couldn't even die if I wanted to. So I
Why?
think
You
I
that
don't
good
know.
at it?
I didn't think so.
The Atari port.
The Atari port, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Not the arcade. No, I wouldn't last at all on that one.
Yeah, I was going to say, you should be doing something different if you can play an hour on Asteroids in the arcade. That was a different animal. And honestly, being different didn't bother me. This is one of those games where, we talked about Pac-Man a little bit in the port, but this port didn't bother me. Even though it was different and arguably inferior, it did add some stuff to it. There was a different color to it. It's, I don't know. It didn't bother me. It was fun to play on home console.
Right.
It was just it was a cool game to have, and again, easily accessible for anyone to just pick up and play at any given time. So.
Right.
They remind me of colorful potato chips.
Yeah, they were
Like,
chips.
Coming
And you're
out
right.
at you.
It looked different. Like Vanguard, for example, right here. This looked a lot different in the arcade than it did, and I actually liked that version better for this Vanguard. I thought that was more fun. I played it. I'd never played the arcade, and then after playing this, I tried the arcade. I don't like it as much.
Well, that's good, yeah.
Yeah.
I did like Asteroids a lot. That was fun.
Yep.
All right, what's your...
All right, my number 6, I'm going to cause trouble, and this is going back. We had this thing where we only pick one in a series, and my number 6 is Pitfall 2. Loved Pitfall 1, taking nothing away from that, but I think Pitfall 2 is one of those examples where the sequel built on and made better everything that the first did. You had the balloons so you can float up and play that music when you got on the balloon. It was 27 levels instead of 2. If you remember, Pitfall 1 was just the 2 levels. There was the top level and the cavern level, and there was travel difference. Pitfall 2 had 27 levels within that. Just think better sound, better game design, extended gameplay. Really enjoyed Pitfall 2 better than Pitfall 1. Not to say, again, I played Pitfall 1. It was great. And this was, there was someone in your grade, I'm not going to name names, and that's actually, I played it at his house first, up the top of the street. That's who had this, and I was like, man, I really need that game. That was just really cool, just seeing how much better than Pitfall 1 it was. Again, I am not taking anything away from Pitfall 1. Pitfall 2 was just, in my opinion, a better game.
Yeah.
Can't go wrong with Pitfall.
Yeah. I can definitely see that.
Yeah, Pitfall 2 was a lot of fun.
And I'm going to withhold comment for a while.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
All right.
Okay. So my number 6 is Keystone Capers.
Nice.
Another Activision
Love this game.
great. So Keystone Capers, you were a Keystone cop, and I think you're in a store, a department store or something.
Departments because there's an elevator.
Because yeah,
Right.
So you're chasing this little
Robber.
that's in just escaped prison. I could tell by his stripes on his
Yes.
outfit. And
There might be a
everything.
fashion choice. You don't know.
So he's got a head start on you. So you're chasing this guy down. You have to do so by chasing him down, avoiding the balls he throws at you, the airplanes he throws at you, the jump over, the shopping carts he pushes at you.
Right.
And when you get to the escalators, you go up the next level, and then you continue on. You keep going and going and going until you catch him. You mess up too much, and you won't have enough time to catch him because he's still running as you're chasing him down.
And it gets hard.
And there's also the elevators. In the middle of the screen, you can actually take the elevator and go up, up, and up. So you think, oh, yeah, that'd be easy. But as soon as you do, he changes course.
Yeah.
So that can backfire on you really easily.
How's he know? I don't know how he knows, but he knows.
He knows, man. He hears it. He's got good ears. He hears the bells. He hears the elevator music maybe or something.
I think it's
So-
as soon as it opens on that floor, he changes, right?
Uh-huh.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah, so that game was so addictively fun. Like, I love that game so much. I played that for hours and hours and hours. I played it not too long ago either, too. I love going back and revisiting that one.
I do.
The only
love
thing
that
is,
game.
I think that game would have been better off if you had only one life, because it seems to me like my one life was like I last forever on it. You know what I mean? So like, okay, that was a good run. But wait a minute, I got 2 more lives to go, so I'm going to be investing, triple the time now on this game. I love it. Maybe I don't know. I probably would if they took it away. I'd probably miss it. I don't know, but
If you know the theme of today, I'm going to say I like the 3 lives.
oh, okay, you'd like those, huh?
But
Yeah.
I mean, if I had to go down, maybe 2 lives. But I would definitely like having all 3. Because it gets really tough with the bricks.
Right.
And they bounce over it. And you
Right.
got to time it out just right. And then you have an airplane and a brick coming at you. And then
Maybe they even do. Maybe they have one for if you mess with the difficulty settings. I never really got into that. so
probably
much, but
do.
who knows?
I like the way the cop is dressed. Like an old...
Yeah, an old-
I don't know. Is it an English cop?
Old
A British
big cop,
cop?
the bobbies with
The
the helmets, those big tall.
Yeah, and he has like the stick.
Yeah, the nightclub. Yeah,
He has a nightclub on him.
Yeah.
Yeah. A billy club? Is it billy?
Billy. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so that was a great game.
yeah.
Lots of replay value on that,
Absolutely.
I think.
Yeah, yeah. That is my number 6,
All right.
Keystone Capers.
Good one.
Number 5.
So my number 5, I'm going with it. River Raid.
Ooh.
Love
good
this
game.
game. So this game I played so much as a kid. I mean, I could not get enough of this. Did I ever beat it? No. I don't think I ever beat any Atari game. I don't know, but this game maybe I did. I don't remember, but I know this game I just kept playing and playing and playing. And this was like a vertical game, and you're you're just like an airplane, and you're flying in the air and you're shooting, just the different type of things like boats and everything in there. I don't know, but it was neat because you're losing fuel, so you had to get the fuel. Or you could shoot the fuel and get more points, but you had to make it through the bridge, and you had to really... They only give you like so much room to fit through, and you have to go fast and slow.
Yep.
So it was really just a cool game.
You gotta
I
make
like
choices.
the graphics on it.
They put stuff far away for you to make you go for them, and then you don't
right.
make the
They
turn.
always get me on that, So it's how they don't always reach too far away.
Yeah.
But yeah, they got me. But this game really kept my attention.
Yeah, that was a really great game. I considered that for my top 10 as well. It's going to be on his, I know that. But yeah, it's I like that game too.
I was actually doing some research, and I have here...
Another Activision great, right?
Oh yeah, Activision. I have here, River Raid, basically it was one of the first games to be banned for minors
Really?
in West Germany because of its violence.
Violence,
And I was
huh?
like, violent? I didn't got any content. So
Yeah.
I don't get how it was.
The Germans are banning that game for
I
violence?
guess in 19, what year? In the 80s.
Yeah.
So I don't know why they
Yeah.
did, but
Gee, I picture them playing this game. They're just like, I'm Frankenstein.
because you're blowing up things, probably,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
blowing
I think they're
boats.
trying not to get another generation of Luftwaffe there. They're trying to trying to make amends for some past violence. And
That could be, yeah. All right.
all right, so my number 5, very simple. Not much that needs to be said about it, but I picked Combat. and really just going with the theme of relationships. This was the pack-in game. This was the game that everybody in the family had. This was the game that even if you only had one game and people came over, you showed them this. So it was a great game. Another simple thing where there was, I think, 27 different game modes, or they said game modes, but really just different games that you could play either against a computer or against another person. And there was nothing cooler and meaner in your childhood the first time someone comes over and you're like, let's play combat. You do a round of tanks and they're like, okay, we're going to do jets. You get to be the giant plane and I'm going to be the three little
fighters.
planes.
Yeah.
And it was a slaughter. There was no way. That giant plane had no chance. But you always suck it. I'm going to give you the controller. You get to be the big plane. You know, I'll just be these little ones. You get to be the big. And that was every time.
I did it too.
You had to. It was like a rite of passage as an Atari owner.
Bigger is not better.
It's like, oh, you only have to hit one of my planes. I gotta hit you.
With three bullets that's as wide as your plane. Yeah, it was great. Just trying to figure out the mechanics and the cat and mouse game with the tanks and the maze. You know, just sitting across from my brother, just trying to figure out who was going to be, who was going to get who in the end, and the timing of your shot. You sucker them in, taking their shot, then pop out and take yours. So it was, I really just a good game. Loved it. Great family time with that game, and just the memories of coming home. Obviously, when you first got that thing home, that was what you played. That's what you had, and it was just good game, good times.
And it came with the system,
right?
So it came with it.
Yeah.
Now, was the tank? Did it had a maze to it, or because I just remember two tanks.
There was tons of different
just
levels.
shooting at one another.
Right. So there's different variations,
like,
and depending on which game you selected in the different variations, some of them only had like one, almost looked like a soccer goal. And that's the only thing you had to hide behind. You came out from behind it. But other ones, it was a complex maze, almost like the Dodgem board there, where you had to, find the right. It wasn't a maze per se, but just a lot of obstacles on the board.
So I did not find that part of the game.
Well, too bad they didn't have like a one of these cartridges, kind of like Math Grand Prix, with reading the manual. You would have done a lot better if you read the manual.
Read more.
You stayed on game one the whole time. This game sucks. It's just two tanks.
Yeah, that's basically how I saw it, and I was like, I'm just gonna move on to another game.
No, it's actually, there's a lot of replay value there. It's the magic is player versus player, because that's the only way you can play.
Right.
But it's
which is, looking back, and we were saying, like, that was really a good idea of Atari to do that. Yeah. I think it kind of reminds me of Tron with the tanks going through.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That reminds me of that when you're saying the maze and like that. Wow.
Yeah, it is like that a lot.
So what did we learn from tonight? Yeah. Read your manuals.
Read your manuals.
I thought they're just there just for show.
Right. And there was a lot of different ways you could play with the tanks. You could have like bouncing bullets. You can control the bullets after you move. You have one that your invisible tanks. You have all different kinds.
Oh, I remember the invisible. That's
there's
cheating.
Jets,
right?
And then the biplanes, and then there's the big jet. There's the small one, looks like the Time Pilot style of jets, like in the ones in the game they had the.
So combat's way cooler.
The only thing that stinks about it is if you didn't have a brother to beat up on, as far as these things go, you
had to keep inviting people over. That's why it was nice to have that in there. Any sort of family function, people came over. Hey, let's play the Atari. Be this giant plane.
Yeah.
Right, so you made friends.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's neat. Well, a lot of good things came out of Atari.
It sure did. Including
social things.
My number 5. The artwork on this thing was so beloved by me. I actually got a framed version of this. So.
Oh, I know this one.
Yar's Revenge.
Yes.
Yep.
So this game, I love this game so much. So, in this game, you are a bug.
Yeah.
You're an alien. You're a spaceship. I don't know what you are.
All the above.
But you're definitely like a bug-shaped thing. And you are on this the screen. In the middle there is a force field that you're safe to go into. Nothing could hit you in there, as far as the homing missiles that the enemy sends out at you. You're safe from them there. I mean, it keeps tracking you down wherever you go. If you leave, it hunts you down. You are safe from that, but you're not safe from the cannon that he shoots. So before I get into that. So on the other side, there is a barricade, like a wall, kind of like a breakout style wall, where you have to get at the bad guy in the core, in the center. And in order to do that, you nibble away at his, or you can shoot the pieces. And make an opening so that your cannon on the other side can be fired. So when you fire that cannon, he's moving at this time. Most of the time, it alternates as you go, and that's the goal, is to take him out. But you got to wear it on the wall first.
Right.
In the center, though, you're not safe from his cannon. So that was I don't even know what he is. What is that?
I don't know. I didn't.
I don't know.
He looks like a little Atari symbol with a base on it, but.
Well, didn't he shoot like a ninja star at you, a red ninja star or something?
Yeah, he did. It was like a spinning star, like a
I always
thing.
thought it was like a ninja star.
It started to wind up after every so often he got powerful and tries to hit you,
and they made
you
that
have
noise.
to dodge it. Yeah, yeah,
neat.
and you have to avoid it up until that point. So,
Oh yeah, that was a cool game.
Was
that in Wreck-It Ralph, the bug? It reminds me of that, like the bugs. The side bugs are like, were they taken after that or something? Those side bugs.
Think so. I think that might have been just more of like a that was in the girls game, that wasn't it? There was like a first person, like a gun game. I just took that as
Hero's Duty or something.
Yeah, like
I said duty.
Yeah, duty. So yeah,
I like that game a lot. I used to like it a lot.
It makes a lot of people's top 10 lists and a lot of people's number one. I did not have it, strangely enough, out of all the games that were out there, so it did not make my list.
There's a lot of games.
Too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like variation. Like after you beat that one time, then the whole wall starts shifting and stuff. All different ways to fight it, but yeah, great game.
So it gets harder as you
go. It does. Yeah.
I like that. It gets more challenging.
Great game.
Good one.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Yar's Revenge.
Number 4.
All right, my number 4 is Jungle Hunt. Jungle
Good one.
Hunt, super cool game. Yeah, I love how he like swung. You're like Tarzan, right? And you're swinging from rope to rope, which is pretty cool because it seems like the front of the game, like the forefront is moving, the background's not moving. I don't know, or it looks like you're moving. I don't know how they did it, but it's really cool. But like you swing on the vines first, you have to time that out, and then he jumps into the water. Then you're now all of a sudden like do you have a knife or something? I don't know. He's like killing fish and everything, like the alligators. So it was like it's a really cool game and all the animals, and I liked it a lot.
That's crazy. I didn't remember that having parallax scrolling in that. I know in the arcade did. I think
Right, I think the illusion there was the treetops that were in the foreground there didn't move, but the thing swung and the background didn't. So it was an illusion thing. It wasn't really a true like layered thing, but it was a great visual illusion that they gave you.
Yeah, that was cool though. I like that.
Oh, I love that game.
It was a great game.
Absolutely.
Fun. And a lot of cool animals.
It did. Yeah.
You just love to murder fish with a knife.
There's the alligators. They had two different kinds of alligators. Yeah.
All right, that's my number 4.
Cool.
My number 4 is one of these we talked about, how the ports of actual arcade games, and sometimes they end up like Pac-Man, and sometimes they end up actually being better. And for me, and maybe this isn't everyone else's case, but for me, my number 4 is Defender. I thought that I played it once in the arcade, and being that young playing it in the arcade, I'm like, this sucks. It's like handing a 5-year-old Dark Souls. Yeah. You don't do stuff like that. Like it was just that game was brutal, and you could not figure out the scheme. Like later on, I figured it out, and I was able to enjoy it. But on the Atari, when we had it, this was one that was really cool that we would all just sit around and play because it had, again, good sound. The sound effects were really neat on there. But the game was so much more accessible. It was dramatically easier than the arcade version, which made it more fun. It made me actually able to enjoy this. So this was one of the first experiences with the mini map. So you had that little part across the top so you could see where the survivors were, where the enemies were. And you have to go across the screen, reverse when you need to, fire your thrusters and save these people. And it was it had a great feel for the momentum of the ship when you tried to switch directions. It was just, I really thought that this was a great game, a really good port from the arcade, and totally enjoyable. Everyone in the family really liked this game. We had a good time with it. Defender, number 4.
Defender.
Yeah, there's a lot of people love the original way that it was set out in the arcade, but you had to learn that. That was definitely a steep learning curve. Once you get it down, you're fine. But it's a two-way joystick up and down.
Right.
A button to change directions.
Yeah.
A button to fire. A button to thrust to move and everything. And then there's a button for like a warp or something.
Yeah.
Or whatever it was.
Yep.
Yeah, and it was confusing. If any kid, no one was good at that game when you first played it. You really had to learn that game. And that did make it a lot more simple, definitely.
Yeah, I've seen that on like YouTube. I've seen like people playing that old 1980s arcade game, and it looks hard.
Yeah.
And it's not, like there are certain common schemes out there in video games. Like Pac-Man set a precedent for that movement through a maze, and there are other games that the scheme was there. The one button was always for fire, but having to do buttons for all sorts of different functions was weird and was never reproduced. It's not something that really caught on. I don't know if they were trying for something novel or just didn't want to do the programming. I don't know.
I think it's cool to do that, but it's too hard. I think people just get sick of that. And plus, you're paying for it.
And it's not intuitive. That's the thing. I don't mind a different scheme.
Maybe if it was more intuitive, it probably would have been better.
But it's not intuitive. And that was the high entry point.
Yeah, people still think that's one of the arcade greats, and I like it too. But I don't really, like you said, I'm just really not that good at it because I just can't put the time in it to get good at it. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things. And its sequel, Stargate, added another button altogether. Like I think, missiles, I think was one, and then warp or whatever it was. Like, oh man, this is all over the place. I really can't. So I'm sure it's a great game. I'm sure all those people can't be wrong, but I'm just not willing to put in the work to learn that game.
No, and it's that's why it was simple to have this. You had the simplicity of the controller on the Atari made the game more accessible to everyone, and I think that was something that was beyond my grasp with a quarter. Now in my home is playable, and I really started to enjoy it. I couldn't even get into the story or what my whole purpose in flying the ship around was. Now I know I'm trying to save these people, and it's Defender. That makes sense now.
Yeah.
Not hate-filled rage at a bad button scheme.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
Can we just mention... So we mentioned Pac-Man, the port for the Atari. Can we just tell a little bit about the Atari version? It wasn't great.
Oh, that was
And I hate to put down Pac-Man, because I love Pac-Man. I love the arcade so much. And again, Pac-Man as a child, I never played the arcade. So I didn't know any better.
Right.
I've seen the arcade. I remember, you saw it. Maybe I did play, but I did see it. But I didn't have a problem with it. But looking back, I'm like, man, they're not even dots.
It really was disappointing.
But they said,
they're dashes.
They're just dashes, And then Pac-Man goes like, bum, bum, bum. He goes up like this, and he goes this way.
He doesn't change directions.
And he goes down.
Just kinda...
And he's always facing the same way.
Yeah. And then instead of cherries, whatever, you have like a little, a bar with two colors in it, orange and then the ghosts, they flicker like crazy.
Flicker, invisible.
And then when they turn blue, you don't even know where they are half the time. I mean, despite all that, I didn't have a bad time with it. It was a terrible port, but in itself as a game, I didn't really mind it that
and again,
much.
I played
port,
so much of it. Yes, I played hours and hours. But looking back, I'm like,
It worth $60 my grandma ever spent on me back in the early 1980s money. Jeez, that was.
She was mad at you.
Yeah, I was mad at myself for wanting this.
Yeah, that's funny. But you know what? It's in our Atari right now, so it must have done well.
Right.
All right, let's move on.
Okay, so it is. Isn't it my number 4?
Yes.
It is.
Okay,
Your
let's
4.
move on. All right, let's see. All right, so my number 4. Okay, this is my first arcade port. I have a connection to this game because I know I alluded to it earlier on. But my grandfather had a bar. He owned a bar, and when we were kids, on Sundays, we'd meet up. He'd take us around and take us out to eat and everything. And every Sunday we would hang out with him. And at the end of the day, we'd usually go back and go to his bar, and then we'd actually bar was closed on Sundays because that was his kind of family time. So we would go back to the bar and we would play there was the pinball game. It was Gorgar. It spoke to you. It was menacing. It was awesome.
Oh, that's awesome.
But we played multiple different arcade games that we had there. And one of them was Tutankhamun.
Oh, yes.
So Tutankhamun, again, this is my first arcade port you're going to find on here. And it is by far an inferior port to the arcade. But the memories I just have of this thing, it just had, you started off, you were this explorer. You could shoot left and right. And then they had like snakes and bats and moths, all these things that are coming at you. And you would collect the key to get to the exit, collect all the treasures on the way for points. And then there were multiple levels. I think there was, I don't know, for whatever the case is. But it was hard, very challenging. And I remember not ever getting past the last board on it because it was definitely tough. But it just was so immersive to me that I just dove right into that like Egyptian, like, you know, the ancient Egyptian like history and stuff. And I ended up like finding that so interesting. Like for a time when I was a kid, I wanted to be like an archaeologist because of this game. You know what I mean? It was like I want to know about King Tut and all this stuff. And I actually ended up watching a lot of shows on it and everything. And then when Indiana Jones with the Ark of the Covenant, the Covenant and stuff, like where they had, like, I just was like, oh man, I want to be an archaeologist. It's a great game.
It's funny because I had somewhat of a similar experience with getting really interested in Egypt, but for Riddle of the Sphinx.
Ah, yeah.
Which is another great classic there, which did not hold your hand and just really was, you're trying to figure out the point of it. It was like a reverse slalom. Yeah. Trying to figure out what's going on with the scorpions and stuff. But I really I wanted to know more about this culture, which you heard about it in school and they told you some things, but man, here it was kind of real on your screen.
Yeah. And that was one of the games that we beat finally for the first time.
Right.
Here not too long ago, like, because we just wanted to go back and
figure it out
because now we have the internet to help us cheat.
Yeah.
Actually, you can even find manuals on there to read if you actually wanted to.
If you
you know what? You're talking about,
if you're into the whole
you were
manual
influenced
reading.
by this. You really like delve into the cultures. If I only read the manual.
Yeah.
I was starting to think you were illiterate until
I know.
I wasn't. I was just lazy. I should have really.
Fair enough.
I could have been
relate.
somebody. You know what?
Yeah. I could have been a contender.
I could have been if I just read the manual. Man. Well.
Oh, well.
I learned my lesson.
Now you don't have to read them anymore. Now there's tutorials for everything. So,
Thank you, Lord.
Not even come a manual. So.
In a couple of years, when we invent time travel, 2-Bit Goon was going to go back and tell his younger self, read the manual!
Yeah.
You could be someone!
Yeah. Listen up, chump. You read the manuals, will you? Rough them up. You'll never forget that.
Don't rough me up.
Some man with a beard roughed me up, told me to read the manuals for my Atari. My Atari tapes.
He smelled like cannolis.
Atari tapes.
Yeah, so that's my number 4, Tutankhamun.
Right, very good. I just want to say about the Atari tapes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Indestructible, I think. They really do.
Yeah.
Like,
The fact that they still work.
One of them actually didn't sound too
all
indestructible.
these that we have work. That Atari in front of you works. All those games work.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
They don't make them
Except
like
that-
they used
listen.
to.
This is just for show.
Yeah.
You know what? I think it works. This one I'm not sure
does.
works.
Yeah. Sounds
But I
like
know
it
all the
works.
games work.
That's just a great feeling.
Oh,
getting
yeah.
that there,
All of mine had that.
Yeah.
It became fun to play with, actually.
Right. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Let's do it without.
Right.
It's naked. No, put it back up.
no.
Okay. All right.
All right. That was my number 4.
Number 3.
All right. Number 3. My number 3, or if you live in certain parts of Pennsylvania, tree. But number 3 is Adventure.
Nice. Good pick.
This game is so awesome. When was it? Like 1980-ish, around there it was made.
Yeah.
I'd say around there. But you're basically a square, and you go on this adventure with dragons, and you got this like golden arrows, and you gotta kill the dragons, and you gotta go into the castles, and you gotta get a bridge and go through mazes, and the bat. I hate this bat. So there's a black bat that just comes by and just steals your stuff. So then you just can't conquer the game. It's so... I hate the bat. But level 1 is super easy. It's cool. But then level 2, you go down into some type of dungeon-ish thing. I don't know. And it's a maze.
Yep.
And then they put a dragon down there. And he eats you. And it's game over. But it was also in Ready Player One. And I'm wondering... They said, in that movie... It was... I don't know if it's just for the movie or not. Which was a book first. But became the movie. and they said in Adventure, on part of the screen you could see the people who made the game.
It's an Easter egg.
An
That's
Easter
the
egg, yeah. Is
first
it actually
first
there?
Easter egg, yeah.
Is it really there?
It's not. It's not the actual first. There's other people that did it before that, but it's credited as being an Easter egg because that's what caused the controversy about the writers or the producers not being able to put their name in it, and it was hidden. The other stuff was done intentionally and with the will of the basically overlords of the game, so they were able to do it. He had to do this secretly, and that's why it's credited as the first thing there. So yeah, that's totally there. And I'm going back. I was going to say I was holding this for before, but your Lego thing, one of the cartridges is Adventure, and I think there is an Easter egg in the cartridge.
No way.
Yeah, there's like a secret
cool.
thing you can do to get that there. So that was a little homage to that.
If that goes on sale, I'd love to get that because who doesn't love Legos?
We'll do a playthrough for that too, so we can see this. We'll
I would love that because I tried to do it and I couldn't get the Easter egg, but it was really cool. Would you say it's like the first action adventure game? I mean, the name Adventure's in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, definitely the first on a home console.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's my number 3.
Great game.
So my number 3. Probably wouldn't make a lot of people's list, but this game was a revolution for me, and the game is Mountain King. If you've ever had that,
I never heard of this one.
Was such a cool concept, and again, being a sound person, and sound plays such an amazing role in this game. So you're basically going through these caves, picking up what is supposed to be diamonds. They're just little sprites on the screen, and you have to find a crown and then bring it back to the tomb, and then once you have that, you can find the flame. But to find the flame, you have to keep moving around the caves, and eventually as you start to get close, you'll hear a song start to play in the background a little bit, and the song gets louder as you get closer to this thing. So you have to, and you can only find these things by shining your flashlight. And it's jumping between these different platforming levels, and it's just really it's an infinite side screen. You'll go around, and you have to bring the flame back. Then you can go inside and pick up you have to get the flame, bring it back, and then you can take the crown, and you have to get the crown all the way to the top of the mountain. And as soon as you have the crown, it starts playing Krieg's In the Hall of the Mountain King, which is great, and sound was such a cool thing. But now the bats are coming across, and if they get you, they take the crown back, and you have to start the whole process over. Just a really, really cool dynamic to this, the way that everything played out. And again, no hand holding. The manual really didn't tell you what you were trying to do. It just gave you a little backstory, and you had to figure this stuff out. But I thought that was such an interesting thing. Now, the side story with this, again, the relationships, this is one that they had at my aunt's house. I didn't have. And my deaf cousin played this as well. And it really spoke to me about there wasn't really a conscious effort for accessibility in games back then, because she would struggle to figure this out because she couldn't hear the sounds to try to figure out when she was getting close to the flame. Now, she would just have to basically poke around in the dark until she saw it with the flashlight. So that was an interesting just a little retrospective on that, and how far we've come in making things. There's settings for color blindness, there's accessible paddles and things like that. But that just really, as a kid, was one of those things that was just stuck with me. How I was able to play this in the full way that it was meant to, but she couldn't. But yeah, really cool gameplay, really neat mechanic, some great classical music in there to go with it. Just really like the game.
Yeah, I didn't play this until we played that here when you played it that day. I never played that one either. And you know what? I never really had Adventure either.
What?
I never had it. I
You
never had
didn't
that
have
game.
Adventure?
No, I did not.
Oh, that was one of the
I don't know how it
games
slipped by the...
That's your Legend of Zelda moment right there, man.
I tell you. I know.
Yeah, true, right?
And I didn't have Yar's Revenge, so I'm not in the clear either.
I didn't have Yours Revenge, but my friends had it, and I loved it. I loved playing it. That and, Joust. I love that game, too.
Yeah, but like adventure, another D&D, what I would have really probably liked it if I had it.
Oh, I would have loved it.
What I did have though was my number 3, Venture.
Yeah.
Another
Venture. I love that game. That was
another
fun.
arcade port. So.
Oh, I didn't know that.
In this case, it was definitely inferior because, it was an early game, so the graphics weren't that much of a difference. But the thing is there was a whole missing level. I think there was 3 in Venture in the arcade and 2 levels. So you were this guy, Winky. You're a little ball with a little bow and arrow. But first you start off in an overworld. So you're basically in this huge dungeon, and then you're going through the corridors, and there's these monsters in the corridors that can kill you, and you have no way to kill them. So basically, you're at their whim. So all you can do is duck into one of the rooms, and when you go into one of the rooms, it zooms in on that room that you're in, and in that room, you have enemies of a different type, some other type of fantasy. Could be a goblin, could be a snake, could be a griffin, whatever the case is, skeletons, whatever. And then you have to get the treasure and escape. All the while, you have to get out before the hall monster starts coming in after you if you take too long. This thing had traps. It had a different treasure in every room, different villains in every room, and then once you clear out all of the boards, you go on to the next level, which is all different. And it was so great.
I was drawn to that game.
And again, it was like another close thing I had to D&D too. It was just like I got so into that. I loved that game. Yeah. I loved it. Yeah, I remember drawing with like on a tablet, like my own levels and all this stuff. I was totally nerded out in that one. Yeah, but again, the arcade game is better. But it's a hard game. It's difficult. And one thing you shoot guys and their body stays there for a while with the arrow in it, and if you touch that, you die.
Oh.
You gotta watch out too. Yeah.
Oh man,
yeah. It seems like a terrible thing to be carrying around.
Right. Yeah. True. Yeah, that's a great game. Yeah. Venture.
I like that. That's a good one. Good pick.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, that was one, like I said, I have such a connection with it on the Atari level as opposed to the arcade level that I couldn't not put it as one of my favorite games because it was. You know what I mean? Yeah. Even though the arcade game was a lot better and there were other things that could have been on this list, I had to do it, man, just for nostalgia purposes alone.
I agree with
game
that,
was
though.
Awesome.
I really like that game.
Yeah.
You're like a dot.
Yeah.
You move the dot.
In the corridor. Then when you go into the room, you're the round circle with the ball.
That's neat.
Yeah, so that's my number 3, Venture.
Number 2.
All right, my number 2 is Frogger.
Oh.
Everyone, you gotta love Frogger.
Love it.
You gotta love Frogger. This game is it stood the test of time. I mean, it's been, I don't know when it was made, 1980 something? I don't know.
80.
So,
maybe.
1980, and then, it was in Seinfeld. They did an episode of that with it, which was amazing. I mean, again, not Atari, but it was like with the arcade. So, I mean, and there's so many different versions of Frogger. But I did love the Atari. That was my first time ever playing Frogger. And I played over my friend's house. I played it over, of course, my house all the time. It was a simple game, though. Right? Kind of like, Crossy, was that Chicken...
Freeway.
Yeah, Freeway.
Yeah.
But you're a frog. You get across the street with the cars coming.
Yeah.
Then you get to the level. Was that?
Thematically, it's not as good as a chicken crossing the road, but it's a better game.
By the frog crossing the road. So, yeah, but then they got to the water part, and that's when it got interesting. It was the whole thing, but I mean,
I love
then you had to jump on the logs would go at different speeds, and then, of course, if you get into higher levels, then you have, like, little snakes or something on there, and it's just difficult. It gets really difficult quick. Right.
The alligators.
Yeah, the alligator would open if you jumped into its mouth. You get obviously, but you could jump on its back and live. Yeah. So that's one of my favorite games, Frogger.
Frogger, man, I love that game. This is another one that I played at my grandfather's bar. I still love this game. I got an arcade level though. I love this game, and Frogger. Oh man, I wanted to put that on this list, but to me that was anchored in the arcade version of it.
Right.
But I still had the one for the Atari, and I played it all the time. Right. I still love that game too.
So that's why I picked it, because I didn't play the arcade at the time, but my first version was Frogger for Atari. So
fantastic game.
I fell in love with it then, and then I ended up playing the arcade versions, and of course I can't get enough of it.
Great pick, man. Great pick.
And funny side note is we had Frogger and we had Freeway, and in my house, Freeway got more play.
Because the 2-player at the same time.
Yeah, and the simplicity of it versus Frogger, it's very straightforward in Freeway. You're just trying to get across the lanes.
Quite literally, too, because you only go up and down.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I remember Freeway.
But
the chicken.
Good time.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Did it make a noise when it went up?
I had just like bleep or something.
The frog bleep, bloop, bloop.
No. I mean like the Freeway.
I remember the traffic noise.
When you get the traffic when you get hit
so
back.
there wasn't
it,
a noise when the chicken.
It like tweets like when it hits you.
Yeah,
like you get hit.
Thinking.
Yeah.
Again, trying to remember.
Yep.
All right, that's my number 2.
My number 2, already mentioned, but River Raid. River Raid was one of those. This was one of the first ones going up my aunt's. She had this, and again, it was something I had to have. This game was so cool. This was, in my opinion, and I've got my reason for my number 1, but in my opinion, River Raid is the complete Atari game. Like, this was everything. And there's some other really cool facts because I was doing the research about this. One of the first female developers in video games, and all video games, acknowledged as one of the first developers ever there, Carol Shaw.
Really?
River Raid
Centipede is a female designed that as well.
Yeah, and they were counterparts at the time. I forget what the other woman's name was, but there were, I think, 3 of them working for Atari at the time.
That's cool.
But River Raid is credited as being the granddaddy of the shoot 'em up genre. A lot of the things that were used in here, what most people don't realize is she was able to put a code in there. Whereas games like Pac-Man and other games have the enemies have a set motion and objects are in a set place. This was the first real instance of procedural generation. So when they started it, the objects are in a different place every time you make a run.
Wow.
So the fuel things that you had to get, the enemies that would come from different directions were actually random. They were procedurally generated and random.
I didn't know that.
One of the first instances of a checkpoint system. You had to get to those bridges, and if you died, then you would start from that point, so it wasn't starting the whole game over. So really cool
she was
stuff.
A genius,
right? A lot of stuff in there. She was recognized in the Video Game Hall of Fame and everything for this. This was a really huge accomplishment. A really fun game. You could still go back and play it today. You're not going to master it. There is no beating it. It's just trying to get as many points as possible.
Okay.
And those enemies will just keep coming and keep being harder as you go along. So it really, as much as people love it, don't realize how underrated of a game, and the stuff that was done in this game influenced gaming to this day.
Wow. Yeah.
So really cool game. Makes my number 2 on the list.
And can you say her name again? What was her name?
Carol Shaw.
Carol Shaw. Oh,
I knew you were going to have that. I thought that was going to be your number 1. I knew you were going to have Mountain King as well, and it was going to be in combat.
So I want to bring up one point that Steve made was you can't beat the game. So a lot of these Atari games didn't have endings, right? You just keep playing and playing, get the most points, Yeah. So, very different from today's children when they play video games. Every game has an ending, But back then, probably opposite. A lot of games didn't have endings.
Right.
And you just said some games had endings, right? Because you said, which one did you say?
Raiders of the Lost Ark did.
Had an ending to it.
E.T. did.
Yeah.
I didn't think any of the Atari games had endings, to be honest. So I did learn that. But most of them didn't have endings.
You'd probably come up with a bunch more if I thought about it. Yeah.
Yeah. But most of them, right, didn't? Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Most?
Yeah, just because the high score, That's
They're trying to give you replay value. So if the game did terminate at some point for, really, today's games, you have something like a Final Fantasy or an Elder Scrolls that can take 60, 80, 100 hours, whereas these, you could finish the game or a round of the game in 5 minutes. So you had to have that replay value, the high score to go for, in order to really be charging people, in some cases, $50 for that small period of play. Also, when you make a complete game, something that's been lost nowadays, when you have a game that can completely cycle and you can keep going and go for high score, that's something that has inherent replay value. If I can end your story, I can sell you another chapter.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's true.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. Even Adventure, that was a game that had an ending. You can...
Oh, I did have an ending in that. Yeah. yeah, I beat the bat, and then I got the trophy.
Mm-hmm.
So I was happy.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
good.
my number 2 is my final arcade port. One of my favorite games on the Atari 2600. Again, this memory is linked more to the 2600 than it was the arcade. However, the arcade had resonated with me a lot because also this game was also when I played at my grandfather's bar, and I just played it crazy. So the name of the game is Jungle Hunt.
Yes.
Okay, so when I played it in the arcade, it was Jungle King. Okay, so evidently it was Tarzan you were playing in Jungle King.
Okay.
He even had his he had that scream, a very sampled version of it, but it had it and it was cool. And they changed that because I guess they were threatened with litigation where they were going to get sued if they had by whoever owned Tarzan. So they changed him to Safari Joe, some dude in a basic, he got his cheesy English mustache, and he's got his a safari hat on, everything, and his shorts, and he's going to get his legs chewed up by mosquitoes, get malaria, tsetse flies, whatever it may be. So in Jungle, well, I mean, we talked about it a little bit, but so your first stage is you jumping off a tree, vine to vine to vine, and then you dive into the river, and at that point you're fighting crocodiles coming at you. There's bubbles coming up, and you have the ability to stab them with a knife.
Rocks. Weren't there rocks?
And then the third level is rocks. There's a series of small, you're going down a hill. Well, in this version it was flat, but in the arcade version it was down a hill.
Yeah.
You would jump the rocks, and then there's big ones that came, and you would duck those. Each level, though, too, another thing, you had different color hair. Like in the arcade, first one you were like black hair. Second one was in the swimming you had orange hair, and then the third one you had like blonde hair, and the fourth one you had like purple hair. So the fourth one, after you got past that final rock, was you had two cannibals like with spears. They had skull masks on, and your girlfriend was dangling from a rope into like from a tree into the boiling pot of water. And you had to jump over one and then jump over the other one and land onto her. Yeah.
You had a saber.
Yeah, you did. You had a saber. You probably would have known that if you read the manual.
I didn't read the manual. I never got that far.
But no, I mean, I love that
got
game.
To the rocks.
I love that game in the arcade, and I loved it so much. It was at one point in time, it was just so my favorite game, like on the Atari 2600, man. I just love that game so much.
That is a great game.
I could not, even though the Atari port is inferior, I could not, discredit it in any way, shape, or form.
Okay.
It was just, So that is my number 2, Jungle Hunt.
What'd you get from
Jungle King.
Jungle King.
Yeah.
Honorable mentions.
All right, so my honorable mentions. Let's see. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 honorable mentions. I'm sure you all have 2,600 of them, but I'm going to go with...
See what you did there.
I see what I did. All right, my first one was Kaboom.
Nice.
Love Kaboom. We don't have the controller here, but it's like a paddle. It had like a orange reddish button on the side, and then you just turn it like this. All right, and then you had to catch all the... What was it like?
There were bombs
coming down.
In a pail of water.
Yeah, right? So that was such a fun game. My second one was Space Invaders. You got to have Space Invaders on there. Actually, Yours Revenge I have here. That was my... I didn't own the game, but I played the game. And I love that one. Keystone Capers, like we said. One of my favorite. Dodge 'em, like we said. What we didn't say... Well, I don't know if it's your number 1 or not, but Cubert. And then my next one is Joust. So these are some. Defender made mine. Because I owned those games. They were awesome. Air Sea Battle.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't mention that
game.
one.
Yeah.
That's
a good two-player game.
Yeah, that was my brother and I used to play that a lot.
Yeah.
I went with 2 here. Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man. Went with that. I always loved Miss Pac-Man more.
Definitely a better port.
Yeah,
by far.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Pac-Man love you, but they screwed up on you.
They did.
I'm not going to say it was very difficult to do what they did, and I'm not going to discredit that because you can't.
The Donkey Kong port, I think, was arguably worse. I don't know. I still love that game, though.
I love that.
I still love the game.
I didn't put it on here, though. But And then my next one, this one, Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back. Replay value, beyond belief. I didn't beat it, but I love the game. I don't think is there an ending to that?
I don't think so.
Okay, because I'm gonna say there isn't, so I'm glad you said there wasn't. So, because I'd feel really bad if you said there was. I think. But anyway, last two, video pinball.
Yeah.
Did you guys play that video
Yeah.
pinball?
Yeah.
That was just addicting.
That was fun.
Yeah.
And I love pinball today.
That's a good just throw it in and play for a little while when you want to just, you don't want to get in just fun, quick game.
I think that's what makes me love pinball because I don't know. That game's pinball. I love that. Play that a lot. And then next one. I don't know if you guys ever played Mega Mania.
Oh yeah,
That was a
another
cool
one's got to be
game.
in a lot of people's favorites.
That was like
Probably,
food or something going across, and it would be like this way, go this way, this
Forgot
way, this
about
way.
that one.
It would come down, so you're like a ship shooting, but all the stuff it was like a psychedelic type game. I don't
That
know,
was a
and all
great
different
game.
types of weird looking. I don't know if it was food or what. I don't know what it was. It was
No, it was
strange.
all different things. It was weird things. Like one of them was
weird.
like dice. The other one was like hamburgers. And
Yeah, it
like,
was
these
so
were
weird.
like,
It's like you're dreaming or something,
Yeah.
but hungry. I guess.
and
I
you
was
look
hungry.
like you're the Enterprise. And you
Yeah.
can control your shots too. Like
You
when
control
you're
your
moving,
shots,
yeah,
which I thought was neat.
Yeah,
You
it was
know,
cool.
you can do that. So
And
yeah,
all
those are
different
my
weird
honorable-
patterns to them.
Yeah.
That was a good game.
Those are my honorable mentions.
Yeah.
All right, a lot of the same ones on mine. Actually, honorable mentions. A lot of the ports like Asteroid, Missile Command, Space Invaders. Nobody mentioned yet Super Breakout, which I thought was great because that was the one we got the paddle with. Right, you had the going across the bottom there. I really liked that one. Stampede was a lot of fun. Pickup
You're,
game.
you're catching it.
Yeah, that was really fun. Freeway was on there. Atlantis.
Yes.
I really, really loved Atlantis. It took like the Missile Command and took it to the 100 levels higher with the color palette. And then, like you said, with Cosmic Arc being that was really cool finding that out, which I didn't find out till later in life. I thought it was just a reused sprite, but that was the whole concept behind there was your civilization couldn't be saved, but you got to the Ark and you're saving other civilizations.
Someone needs to homebrew so we get a trilogy.
Yeah, right. That's exactly right. Repopulating the next planet
Right.
with all the things you collected.
Yeah.
Great idea. Bowling was another fun one that we played as a family. We
I wish I
totally
put
had
that
forgotten about that until
Yeah.
we brought the carts out. And then the last one, which was a really weird one on my honorable mentions, was Star Raiders. And if you remember the pad that you had, so it was this thing, and it was meant to be used for a ton of games, and they just never materialized. But you would put the slide-in overlay in there so that each buttons did different things in there. And that was, to me, like,
That's neat.
that became closer to a computer. And by this time, we had our Commodore 64, but that was really cool that it was more than just one button. You know, like, and now you think about, like, oh man, at the time it was so complicated. Remember, I had to go into this view and then push this button to do different things. But now we have, like, 13, 14 buttons on any given controller.
Right.
You know, like, and we do that without thinking twice.
Yeah.
But this was, like, really stretching my brain at the time. So those are my honorable mentions.
Yeah.
Nice, very good.
All right, so the arcade ports I had was Wizard of War, another one I have a tie with.
that was a
played at the
great
bar.
game.
Love that game. Vanguard, Qbert, which you had to hold the game. You had to hold like this and
The
play.
45-degree angle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's played with the four-way, joystick on the arcade, so it's just tilted. It's
Yeah.
a four-way tilted 45 degrees, so they kind
is
of
cool.
kind of hard to do on that. But it's
Yeah.
which brings me to mind. It's probably is a no, I don't know. Whatever. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna get into it, but.
All right.
So, Qbert, Phoenix, love the game Phoenix. Moon Patrol.
Phoenix
No,
was
Moon
good.
Patrol. I just,
Oh, I should have put
love
that.
that game
Man,
so
I played
much.
that all the time.
that hurt to cut that one off.
Yeah, I was thinking
Missile
that
Command.
today.
Missile Command, another great one.
Yeah.
Kangaroo, another one I love there
Oh,
too.
man, that
I just
was
did a retro review on that one because I don't think that one gets any love. Like when you mentioned classic games, that one never
Yeah.
gets mentioned. So I had to do a retro review on that.
I
one.
did watch that.
Check
It was
out the
very
video.
good. Yeah, that was good to watch it.
Joust, Frogger, another one of my faves.
Yeah.
Played it at my grandpa's bar. Dig Dug had that one. Another one was
Dug,
on there.
yeah.
Crystal Castles, Centipede, which came with the comic. Remember the comics that came with some of those games?
Yeah.
Defender came with. They were good stuff. Berserk, Battle Zone,
Okay.
and then Asteroid. So Battle Zone was cool because
Talk about that one.
that's vector graphics in the arcade, and in the
Right.
Atari, it was like you got a real rasterized like turret and stuff. It was cool. It was cool. Definitely a cool port of that. I really liked it a lot.
That actually ruined that for me.
Really?
Yeah, I did not like Battlezone on the Atari because I loved
The tank controls.
The tank controls were one thing, but the vector graphics and that and Star Wars arcade game with that vector graphics as well, and they both felt like a dishonor to me to see that thing, and it arguably could be better. It didn't feel that way to me.
Yeah, so I love the vector graphics too. Like even when Star Wars arcade came out later on, like we were way past vector graphics at that point in time, but it was just such I love that game so much. But on the non-arcade ports, Atlantis, I had to cut that one. I love that game too.
I know.
Where you push left to shoot your left cannon, right to push your right cannon, and I think just regular button hits the center cannon. Okay. And it's kind of like in the Missile Command where like these ships combine, you lose your your cities and bases and everything. It's a fun game. Laser Gates also on my list. Crawl. Do you remember playing Crawl?
I didn't play it. Love the movie.
Yeah, it was different than the arcade version. Like it's more of an adventure. Like you had to find the glaive. You had to go to the level where that spider queen is in that, and find your way to the hourglass river in the middle, or something like that. And then you fought the beast and stuff. There's like 4 or 5 different levels in this. It was a really good game. I mean, it got frustrating because there's one way to get the glaive is when you're traveling on horseback. It's just like kind of like a cutscene between 2 of the levels, and you have to push down exactly at the right spot where the glaive was, because you get some kind of thing to tell you where the glaive is, and if you don't do it, you don't get it. So you have to go back and do it again after another try. Empire Strikes Back. I love flying the snow speeder at those AT-ATs was really cool. Spider-Man, remember Spider-Man climbing the tower?
Yes.
Getting up to the Green Goblin going across the top.
And his web will go.
Yep.
And he has to just go up with the web. That was neat.
Moonsweeper, another game I love too. Yeah. I talked about the cover art, but man, the game was good. It was great. Ghostbusters, I really enjoyed that too. Enduro, another Activision classic where you're racing all different kinds of terrain. Barnstorming, got that on there too. Yeah. Stampede.
Yeah, Barnstorming was good.
And there was a couple more. One I was going to jot down when you guys mentioned. I couldn't believe I missed it, but yeah. But that's nice. They're my honorable mentions.
Very nice.
And number 1.
All right, so my number 1 is on the screen right now. So it's Pitfall. Pitfall was my number 1. I know, Steve. Take away from. Don't want to take away from number 1 because number 2.
Totally okay.
Better game, but again, remember my list. Nostalgic purposes. I played it. I had the game. This game just changed everything. It was just so cool. And you had 20 minutes to get as many treasures as you could. Yep. And I looked it up. It said there were about 255 screens. And you had, obviously, you had like the logs. You had, what was that white thing with one eye on the bottom? I don't know.
The
scorpion.
Oh, okay. So the scorpion. Yeah, you had quicksand, tar pits. My favorite though was just jumping on the vine and you go like that was my favorite. And then you had to jump off right, and then you wanted the alligators. You had to jump over the alligators. Right. Yeah. So it was just so much fun as a kid to play that. And then again, it was good because how many times did they revisit that?
Right.
I mean, it's like PlayStation had it, like all the way up. So it was just a great game.
Yeah.
Oh, I have here, it sold 3.5 million copies by 1984.
Wow.
And it came out when did it come out? I don't know what year it came out.
82, maybe?
I think it was 80.
Yes, yeah.
I think it was 82, around there. Yeah. So it came out in 82. So it comes out in 82, sold millions of copies by 84, 2 years. That's at probably $50 to $60 a piece.
Oh, yeah.
So definitely a great game.
Fantastic pick. Great pick.
Yeah, good game. Again, I have nothing against it. I think it's a good pick. It should be at the top of most people's lists. A lot of hidden mechanics in there. Like that was one of the ones that did have an end because you were supposed to get to a spot.
Yes.
And when you first started to realize that when you go into the underworld, the screen goes 3 at a time versus the one, the over part.
But if you do it wrong, you can miss something up above. Yes. So you got to do it right. I love to do a perfect playthrough for that game.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I could.
Yeah.
That's a tough
one. Yeah.
It could be done. Well, that was my number 1.
All right, my number one has already been mentioned, but I have it at the spot just because the rest of these had talked about relationships with different people. Most of them were just different plays in my life, but this one was one where really was a journey of self-discovery for me and my love of games, and it didn't have to be with other people to be enjoyed. So my number one is adventure, and for a lot of reasons and how much I love this game, and we talk about how crappy the dragons look, and that's totally fine. And there's actually a reason behind a lot of this. I've done a big dig into this. I'm not going to waste a ton of time on it, but this was such a cool experience for me, just going into different screens and going into different castles and having to find, and it was a chalice, not a trophy. I know it was another thing that looked like a trophy, but it was a chalice that you're trying to find.
I can see it dip down
and then get that back, and the difficulty that ramped up, and now you had to find a magnet so that you can actually get the ladder to you because it was inaccessible in other ways. And then you went into the dungeon where it was pretty much invisible. You can't see where you're going. We talked about Warren Robinette and hit that Easter egg, and what was really funny, one of the coolest things about this is that when he was done programming it, because he had worked on this for years before that, he had found another game that he liked and wanted to do a visual representation before he started going to Atari, and they kind of put him off a couple times. And like when he got to this and this piece of hardware versus a computer and the limitations of it, what couldn't be done and what could be done, he had to refine it several times before he can make a good port of it, or a good version of it. And when he was done, I think there was 15 bytes left on the thing, like on the cartridge, and 5% of that memory was his Easter egg. So he actually found a way to get the amount of memory down and left 5% on there for that Easter egg that he put in there.
Nice.
A little bit of trivia there. There was the yellow castle, or the yellow dragon, the green dragon, and the red dragon, and their names are Yorgel, Grundle, and Rindle.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And one of the things that's not printed in the manual, that later, like he said in an interview, as a joke, like they asked him what the name of the bat was, and the bat is Nubberrub.
That's a great name for a bat.
He is no longer as intimidating now when you know his name is Nubberrub.
Man, that bat.
This is considered the first action-adventure video game, the first console fantasy game. This was the first game to have enemies move when you weren't on the screen. So it actually kept track of that. Yeah, the dragons and the bat, when you weren't there, they still were moving. And that was kind of a huge thing because, you know, you're thinking that only the stuff on the screen matters. He had to actually find a way to program this so that things kept track of where they were at when you weren't there. So really cool things.
That's really cool.
And it is one of the earliest examples of continue game. So you were able to, if you died, if you were eaten by the dragon, you can actually get your stuff at the place where you were eaten.
Yes, that's true.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
That is true, yeah, because if I left something there, or you left let's say left the castle open, you could go back and, because I would always place things in the castle, and I'd lock it up. You know, I try and lock that up. Now, did you ever use you could use the bridge, and you could, like, go up through the bridge and go to another board? You could not the board, but you could see like the other, like the higher board.
Yeah, you had to really get creative with these things because again, no hand holding, and some of them were completely dark. So you had to figure out where you were going to go with these things. And the absolute reason why this is number one on my list is because The Legend of Zelda wouldn't exist without this game. This game set the blueprint for item management, screens having different things, having to go to different places, different physical places in the game to accomplish something, and then coming back and redoing other things. So any of those games that are like that, Zelda, even looking at games like Metroid, where it's place to place and having to know what to do in different areas, those games would not exist without this. And I absolutely loved that they put it in Ready Player One, that it was included in there. It was a perfect homage there to what I consider the best Atari 2600 game.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good call. Yeah, it's a great game. I wish I had it when I was a kid. So I have that fond memories of it as much, but
See, now you feel bad.
yeah, I missed out. Yeah.
Never too late.
Oh yeah, I've played it a couple times. But we'll do a playthrough on that one too. That one shouldn't take long. We can do that one.
Well, go on level 3.
Yeah.
It's just that the first one there was only one castle, and as you added levels, then they started adding the different castles and the dungeons, and actually they add more dragons as you increase the level. Whereas the first one only had one, you could pretty much skirt them, if you knew what you were doing. But
We'll have to do that then.
Yeah. All right, what's your number one?
Okay, so my number one has been mentioned by both of you.
Okay.
So it comes down to Activision being, they could do no wrong back in the day. So one of my first games, one of my favorite games anyway, I don't know if it was exactly my first, but it was just one that really jumped out at me was Pitfall. Okay?
Yes.
Pitfall was an amazing game. Like, I loved everything about this game. To this day, I just, I can go back and just, the memories of that, just stand out more than anything else as far as, an Atari game. Pitfall 2 came around and just totally, amplified that times 10. You had background music, you had continue points, you had to rescue, I think you had to find the treasure, you had to rescue Penny and Quick Claw, the cougar.
the cowardly cougar.
Which was in the Saturday Supercade.
Right.
Yeah.
So there was the exploration of it all, which was great. All the stuff they threw in there. And it's a fantastic game. I remember a part towards the end where you got to duck under those bats that are flying at man. That, you talk about rage. That part where you had to keep doing that one over and over and over again. Right when you're that close to Quick Claw was horrible.
Oh, yeah.
But all in all, pound for pound, I have to go with Pitfall. My original, original Pitfall.
I agree with that because I picked it too.
Oh my goodness! See, playing Pitfall, you're just exploring. This whole exploration of it all. It was just you can go anywhere, do this. I'm like, okay, so now I go next thing. What's going to come up next? Oh, a tar pit. How do I beat these guys? These alligators, or what do I do here? You jump on them, I die. What's going on? I had to read the manual, and then I kept going.
I didn't have to read it.
Then I found out I
just
jumped on jump on their heads. You can keep going, which is the only really thing that kills me anymore. I think.
Yeah.
But
how
unless
funny
you get
is it
too
though
cocky.
when you jump into the alley and it just eats you? You
Yeah.
just fall
You
into
just
his
sink.
mouth.
Yeah.
That's hysterical.
Yeah.
That makes me laugh every time.
The thing that gets me in Pitfall is I can play for 20 minutes, but the thing that gets me is I just get cocky. I get too comfortable, and then my mistakes that I make are ones I shouldn't have making had I been really not gotten cocky.
Right.
I just kind of make a dumb mistake.
But you have to try to get all the treasures, and that's tough.
Yeah. That's something I like to do. I'm gonna put that on my bucket list too, along with beating Mike Tyson from the.
I beat Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
I can't do it today, but I did it as a 12-year-old.
But picking between the two was hard because Pitfall 2 in its own was an amazing game. Amazing. And then Pitfall 1, though, it just had that nostalgia factor with me. It was just that good. And I still think it's really just a fantastic game and my favorite.
But it's really neat what they did with it, though. How they made the second one better than the first. You actually made a sequel better than the first one.
Yeah.
And they added things that they do today. So, this is like trailblazers here.
Right.
So everything they did, you may look at the graphics today and go, well, or play for 5 minutes and go, well. But they were trailblazers,
Yeah.
So it's good.
And that's the thing I found interesting is when they programmed Pitfall, they probably thought this is what we can get out of the machine. Mm-hmm. For them to take the same machine and make something as big as Pitfall 2 out of the same stuff, they squeezed that much out of it just learning within a year or two how to do that much better. It just these guys are above and beyond. I mean, we're entering the phase now where AI can program. And it's going to make games. It's probably going to.
It'll hear you.
I'm sorry, but I think that just the genius of what all these guys on this list, all of the things that they did, whether it's just coming up with a. Using sound as a weapon or using sound as something to help you, to squeezing every last bit of memory in so that you can make a coherent story. Even with adventure, sacrificing the sprite of a good-looking character for a block. If I do that, then I could do that, and I make my dragon seahorse ducks. Right. Then I can do that. And with Pitfall, just finding that magic formula and being able to track those screens. And it's a really simple thing. You avoid death, collect treasures, get out.
Yeah.
Like it's a very simple thing, but it was just done so well.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that anybody the first time they played Pitfall didn't think like, wow, this is cool. Like they're really pushing the envelope. This is neat. And it didn't really sacrifice. Your character did look like a human, and the mechanics of that rope, that your vine that you're swinging from were very smooth.
Yeah.
It was very, very smooth, and the controls were tight. If you screwed up, you knew it was because of your timing.
Right.
You didn't, again, like the whole Dark Souls thing, if you died, it's your fault. It's not that the game is being cheap on you. It's, and you learn from that and you get better. And then Pitfall 2, again, just upping the ante on all of that and giving you that much more of what you loved. They didn't change it. They didn't try to make it into something different. It's not, Zelda 2. It's Pitfall 2, and it was good.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I agree.
one of the best. Well, so that's our top 10 Atari 2600 games. What do we miss? What do you think? What do you think of our list? Let us know in the comments below. I'd like to know what you think. So, anything else in closing?
No.
Okay.
No, I think I said we said our piece.
All right, cool. Well, hope you enjoyed this. Until then, you'll be given 3 lives. So grab your broken controller and shoot for the stars, my friend. Arcade Decade, over and out.